Coming up on this episode of the Upper One Podcast, it's been a busy summer, so we're going to catch up. Along with an unedited, unscripted tribute episode for my friends who are traveling down the Alcan Highway with a special guest in studio. Stay tuned.
And now podcasting from the great state of Alaska, this is the Upper One Podcast.
All right, welcome back. This is the 34th episode of the Upper One Podcast. Before I get into the main topic of speak for this episode, which will be the Alcan Highway, just catching up a little bit. As y'all know, we were preparing for the wedding July 2nd. That went over really good. We started off the ceremony up at the Hatcher's Pass Summit, which is just north of Palmer in the Talkeetna Mountains. That went over real good. Then we had the reception down at the Palmer Train Depot. Like I'd said before, one of the things you get when you're setting up and wedding planning for, bride and groom, you get the bridezillas coming out. And I'm not at all saying Tori was a bridezilla. She wanted her wedding, and she wanted it the way she wanted it. But one of the things we did was we kept her away from seeing the decorations while the decorations were going on. We knew what she wanted, and we gave it to her, and we absolutely blew her out of the water. Both her and Trevor, they said that the decorations and everything for the reception was higher than expected. So I was glad to get all that done. I can't say I was the best DJ. Some things happened that didn't go as planned and that I thought I had prepared for, but it didn't happen. But if you are a part of my personal page on Facebook, I did post a few of the photos. I think somewhere around 65 or 70 photos, I think, out of almost 1,700. So there are some photos, showing the decorations, showing the fun we had and the good times that I remember. And I'll leave it at that. Just so a few other things that have happened. While we had family up here, we had planned on going to Seward for the 4th of July, but that didn't happen. We ended up going to the Wildlife Conservation Center down in Portage with my sister-in-law, Stacy, and her husband, Chris, from Arizona, my stepdaughter, Erica, and her boys who live in Texas, as well as Teddy and Taylor who live in Florida. Now, Teddy and Shanna and I, after we left the Conservation Center, we pretty much spent all day there, which we hadn't planned on. But once you get in there and you start enjoying the animals and just sitting and watching them, you can waste a lot of time there. I mean, there's everything from, there was porcupines, there's a bald eagle that had its wing amputated that's been there for 30 years. There was a horned owl, a lynx, there were baby moose, calves, wolves, black bear, elk, Sitka black-tailed deer, caribou. There were a couple of caribou babies, moose. See if I forgot anything. Wolves, black bear. Oh, there are 3 brown bear, and as well as woodland bison. So we virtually spent almost the whole day, probably 2 or 3 more hours longer there than we had planned. But we went from there to Whittier. We drove through the tunnel. So like I was saying, Teddy, Shanna, and I, out of that group, were the only ones that have ever been through it. Like, Erica and her boys have lived here. Teddy and Taylor lived here, but Chris and Stacy do not. And um, even though they've lived here, the family have lived here. None of them have ever been through the tunnel, which I did in a previous episode as the longest tunnel in the United States, 2.5 miles. So we went into Whittier. We really didn't stay long because you go into Whittier from Bear Valley from the Anchorage side at half past the hour, and then at the top of every hour you come back out from Whittier to Bear Valley. So we went in. We stopped at the Lazy Otter, grabbed a couple snacks. They were doing 4th of July ice cream specials, so some of the kids we got all that. I got a chocolate shake, and then we went back, and we kind of just drove up to Alyeska in Girdwood and showed them the ski slope and the hotel, and that was our 4th of July, which was not in Seward like we had planned. Originally, I think we were going to take the boat out and just take Chris and Stacy out and do the sightseeing, Bear Glacier and the sea lions and all the birds, the puffins and the seagulls and the whatever those sea ducks are all called, cormorants and whatever. But like I said, that didn't happen. But we did have a pretty eventful 4th of July. Summer hockey's going really good. I'm skating again. I think we've skated 7 weeks out of the 11 that they scheduled for us to kind of tune up for the upcoming season. As of today, I've gotten 6 assists and 1 goal. Skating real well. Like I said, I'm not looking forward to starting the season because none of my teammates are actually here skating with me, so we're not getting that practice time together. Although I am skating, I'm still having fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to do my best to stay improving from this summer transition into our season. So the cool thing is we got different jerseys. Our Trustworthy Hardware sponsor is predominantly orange in color. They kind of, from what I'm hearing from some of my other hockey friends from other teams, are saying that we're kind of doing a NHL kind of themed color patterns with the teams this year. So our Trustworthy hockey jerseys are going to look like the Philadelphia Flyers. And I've seen pictures of them. As soon as we get jerseys, I will post some of those. But pretty excited about that. One other thing I'm going to add to to my Christmas trip, where we leave November 30th. We go down to, or I should say December trip, not Christmas. We're flying to Vegas November 30th. On the 1st, we're going to the first round of the National Finals Rodeo, which will be my first. I've said that in the past. And then I'm going to talk about something that we're going to do afterwards here in a second that night. On the 2nd, we're going to George Strait, which is going to be another one off the bucket list. As you know, last year I checked off Sarah Evans and Martina McBride. And then on the 3rd, I did get this added to our itinerary for while we're in Vegas. I saw this guy up here at the Backyard Barbecue in 2019. He sang at the same time that, they did a Musicians in the Round kind of acoustic show for the Backyard Barbecue with Kendall Marvel. It was Cody Jinks. He's probably one of the, if not probably in my opinion, the biggest independent artist in the country. So we're looking forward to that. With that being said, after the National Finals Rodeo, we're going to go to the Cosmopolitan and go to the barbershop to see a couple guys that are friends of mine and Shanna's. Ben and Bryce are Elvis Monroe. Well, Bryce... Okay, I misspoke. Ben and Bryce are not Elvis Monroe. Ben and Bryce are the Regulators. Ben and Brian are Elvis Monroe, which I spoke of. We've had them on the pod. Well, they didn't come up this year together. Actually, Ben and Bryce Soderberg, came up. They're the Regulators. Well, they play at the barbershop at the Cosmopolitan in Vegas, and so we're going to go to that after with Coach Kern after the national finals that night. Well, they were up here for the second backyard barbecue, and well, they weren't part of the backyard barbecue, but they were at a concert the next night after Jared Neiman and Lee Brice. They opened up for a band called Milky Chance, which a lot of people have heard, but I haven't. So that's some of the stuff we've been doing. The wife and I have been doing this summer. The Matanuska Brewing Company had 7 tribute bands up here, along with other, not tribute acts, but real acts like Ricochet was here, Jamie O'Neill was here, Night Ranger was here, Saliva was here. They just announced that the, imagine that, the Village People are going to be here. And then POD, which is a rock band, they're coming up. And one that I just saw last night was the Young Dubliners. I've never seen them, never listened to them. I'm sure I've heard their music before, but they're called the Young Dubliners. They're actually really good. They played a lot different live than what I had listened to yesterday during the day while I was out on my deliveries on Spotify. So, it was really good. They actually, the band's from Dublin, or from Ireland, sorry. I don't know exactly where they're from, but they've all got the Irish accents, the fiddle. They called it the violin while they were on stage, but, I'm an American. To me, it's a fiddle. They were just amazing. So I know that my chiropractor, he goes to see them every time that they're here. From what I've heard, he's been at every one of their concerts, which I did not see him last night. But so yeah, there's tribute bands. I've seen the Motor Breath, which is a Metallica tribute, Journey tribute band, AC/DC tribute band, the Eagles tribute band. That's 4 out of the 7. The one we did miss was the Pearl Jam tribute band, and the reason why we missed that is because we were at Hairball. So I'm not saying I was excited to miss them. I would have liked to heard a Pearl Jam tribute band, but you got to put priorities in order here, and Hairball, I won't ever miss them if I'm in the same town. So we saw Hairball, but there was Pearl Jam was number 5. We're getting to the Hysteria band, which is the Def Leppard tribute, and then we got a Motley Crue tribute band, which I'm kind of looking forward to. I am looking forward to, but I've already seen Motley 2 twice, and they were really good. So I'm looking to see how that compares. But that's been the tribute bands. We did go to there were 2 backyard barbecues this year. The first one was Darius Rucker, which we went to. Actually, my wife didn't go because she was still preparing for the decorating. So my stepson Teddy and I went, and we had a blast. And then the second one was, like I said, Jared Neiman and Lee Brice, which the wife and we kind of cut out from that a little early, and we headed over to Chilkoot Charlie's because the Regulators were playing. And if you don't know, I said Ben and Bryce. Well, both of those guys played in the band Lifehouse. Ben, the guitar player, Bryce Soderberg is the bass player. Well, their band is called the Regulators. They're friends of ours. Their sound guy's name is Ziggy. Their drummer's name is Al. I've hung out with them. And one of the other openers for Lee Brice and Jared Neiman was Love and Theft. Stephen and Eric, they've been up here several times. I met them. Actually, before I even really hung out with them, I got their autographs. So I saw that on a poster in the garage the other day. But that concert, the Jared Neiman, Lee Brice Backyard Barbecue concert with Love and Theft, was on a Thursday. Well, cool thing was I was trying to go see my boys after they flew in. Called them or messaged Ben, and I said, "Hey, what are you guys doing around 1 o'clock hour?" And his response was just food. That's Benny. He's Australian. He just said food. I said, "Oh man, all right, where are you going? Do you mind if I join?" And he said, "Yeah, come on down. We're going to 49th State Brewery." So I hightailed it down to there, and sat down with them, and actually it was Ben and Bryce, and then one of Benny's high school buddies from Australia named Adrian, which I met, man, really cool guy, Al, Ziggy, and then Coach, and then Steven and Eric from Love and Theft. So I had lunch with them before the concert and hung out. So getting back to the Jared Neiman, where Shannon and I left, we went to Coots for the Regulators concert. We actually closed that down. I think we got home at 2 a.m, so I went on 3.5 hours of sleep on Friday at work, but it was good times. Well, one of the other openers before Love and Theft was Justin Beltonen, and he is the bass player for Three Doors Down. He's gone solo as a country act. When I spoke to him, he said, yeah, I'm still playing with Three Doors Down, so he's still part of that band. He's not left them. But Justin showed up at Coots later. Steven and Eric from Love and Theft showed up. We all had a good time hanging out with some new friends. And one of the highlights of that night, not just the Regulators rocking your face off, as Bryce says. Justin said, yeah, we were here with Three Doors Down in 2013. And so some of the history of Alaska up here in the Seward Highway between Anchorage and Portage, there was a small, it's not even a town, but it's a little, people live there. It's called Bird. And back in the day, and it was here back in the 60s when the earthquake happened, there's a little bar called the Birdhouse. And during the earthquake, it sunk and tilted the foundation, and the bar and the Birdhouse down there on the Seward Highway tilted. I don't even know what the degree is, the angle of the bar now is, but they left it that way. And up until the early 90s, before there was a fire at the bar, they left it there, and that was kind of like world famous. Well, then the fire happened. They moved that bar. They didn't physically move it, but they did something with it to where they added it on into Chilkoot Charlie's. So there is the Birdhouse inside the bar at Chilkoot Charlie's. Well, Justin said, yeah, we came up here and I left my underwear in the Birdhouse. So I said, come on, Justin, let's go look. So we went and looked, and unfortunately for somebody, maybe fortunately, I don't know, they weren't there. We were shining the flashlight. Justin had his knife out, and we were picking up, corners of people's underwears and other undergarments that they had left and pinned on the wall, and looking for his and they weren't there. So, but that was that. I was just catching up. I know I've gone on. I'm about 17 minutes here. I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off now and get into my main topic. All right, welcome back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the Alcan Highway. For those of you that don't know, it's the Alaska-Canadian Highway, or some people even call it the Alaska Highway. I'm going to do this kind of as a tribute, conjunction with a buddy of mine, Doc Joslin. For those of you that don't know, he's got his own podcast called Bullets to Beans. But right now, his wife and him, Christy and Dave, they're traveling down the Alcan on a move to Tucson because of Dave's job. He's doing a daily video diary of their 10-day trip. And so I just wanted to, didn't know when I was going to do this, but I hadn't planned on when I was going to do the Alcan Highway. I do have my buddy Brian here.
Hello.
He's been on the highway a couple times too, but he said it's like when he was real little. He doesn't remember a whole lot, but we'll get to that here in a bit. So the Alcan Highway was first constructed in World War II to connect the lower 48 to Alaska through Canada. I mean, why would you not call it the Alcan Highway, right?
Yep.
Begins with junctions of the General Highways in Dawson Creek, British Columbia, and runs through Delta Junction via Whitehorse. It was completed in 1942. It was 1,700 miles then. But as of 2012, it was only 1,387. Wonder why?
Straighten the road up.
Well, yeah, they straightened it up. They reconstructed it. They shortened some of the sections. So, yeah, they lost all 320 some miles. It was opened to the public in 1948. Now, there's places that are legendary down there for being on the highway. It's legendary for being rough and challenging because back then it was not paved. It was dirt roads. And if you've ever been across the dirt roads and the potholes after it's rained and thousands of cars have gone across it, there's washboards, there's potholes. You know, it's rained. You probably don't even know. You see a puddle in them. You want to avoid that. I would recommend taking a couple of spare tires. I've got a plug patch kit. You know, if you're going to travel it, take a air compressor. Components of the highway are the British Columbia Highway 97, the Yukon number 1, and then Alaska Route 2. There is an informal system of historical markers developed over the years that denote major stopping points like the signpost forest in Watson Lake.
I don't know.
There's lots of places down there. Watson Lake, Muncho Lake. Delta Junction makes reference to historical milepost 1422, which is where the Alaska Highway meets the Richardson Highway, and then it's 96 miles on from Delta to Fairbanks. Back in the 20s, actually 1920, Thomas McDonald, who at the time was our Bureau of Public Roads, he proposed the highway, but the Canadian government didn't see any value in putting up the funds, so that kind of was shot down in the 20s. In 1929, the BC government proposed economic development and tourism, proposed the highway, so they started seeing that it would turn out for good in the long run. President Herbert Hoover appointed a board with 1 American and 2 Canadians members to evaluate the idea, and then they recognized the military benefit from it. The Great Depression and government lack of support caused the project to not proceed. But in February of 1936, the U.S. approached Canada again, but they feared, the Canadian government feared military implications would prevent Canada staying neutral in the war. By 1936, June, President FDR told their Prime Minister King that a highway could be important in quickly reinforcing the American territory during a foreign crisis. So he was kind of preparing for potential repercussions of any kind of war. President Roosevelt also became the first American to publicly discuss the military benefits of the highway during a speech he did in New York. Then the attack on Pearl Harbor and threats to the Aleutian Islands changed the priorities of both nations. Did you know that, and I want to get into this in another podcast, but did you know that the only portion of World War II fought on American soil was
Alaska.
in Alaska on the Aleutian Islands? Yep.
Japanese occupied several islands down there.
So that was the only part of the war that was fought on American soil. Now, not counting the bombings and stuff, because we really didn't fight nothing there. The Japanese just bombed us, right? There was no.
Where was that at?
Yeah, on the Pearl Harbor.
Oh yeah.
There was no.
bomb. Yeah,
so
just bombs.
Anyhow,
I mean, we shot a lot of their planes down, but
yeah, there were 3 routes planned. There was a Route A, which went one way. There was a Route B that went another way, and then they settled on a Route 3, which was the main thing. And I'm not going to go into that because it just takes too long to just explain it. But it took them time. So when they eventually started construction, the Army Corps of Engineers assigned 10,000 men, which back in that day, they put a third of those men were were blacks, and that's
Yep.
where they started the Negro regiments back then.
There is also a great documentary on Discovery Channel.
Yes.
On that.
Yes,
I've
because
watched it a couple times. It's well worth watching.
so yeah, that was the newly formed Negro regiments back in those days. There is a book. It's called The Milepost. It's an extensive guide to the Alcan and other highways, not just in Alaska or Canada, but it's the main thing is the mile markers on the Alcan Highway. That was first published in 1949, and it is published annually. It is the foremost guide to traveling the Alcan Highway and those other
Or
highways.
even Alaska.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
A lot.
There's other highways. It details just about every drivable surface in Alaska, and then going off into going up to what is that, Dawson?
Yeah, going up Dawson,
North
going
of-
the over the top route.
The top of the world highway
You
that
ever
goes
get a
from
chance to do that? That's a great.
the
great
Dawson
scene.
Highway to Circle. Is that
Yep.
yeah? So with that being said, I have traveled that highway twice. As I said earlier, Brian, he told me he's been on it
I've
twice.
been on it twice, both times when I was like 8 and 10. That's so long ago.
So, and I've been on it a few times, a couple, those 2 times, a lot more recent. But is there anything you remember?
What I remember, it was just unending miles of dirt road. I mean, no cities, no town, no homes. No nothing, no lights, just dirt road.
Yeah. Well, Kevin and I, when he went to school back in '99, he came home for Christmas. He was leaving school because he didn't go to school that next semester. So he packed all his stuff up in his car,
You
and
guys
he
are
left
lucky to be alive.
and he left it at a storage unit in Spokane. And so December 31st, '99, we both flew down there, and then we drove back. And the start of that was not the Alcan. We drove north out of Spokane somewhere. I don't remember the route we took, but we ended up coming home. And so that was the first time I technically, I guess, drove the Alcan. And then I drove it again in 2006. I left here, I think I left it October 10th.
Yeah, something like that.
And I drove all the way over to, well, you go down through Prince George and over to Edmonton and then down through Calgary. And then I drove straight down and then, all the way to
I think
Vegas.
You left on the day that my uncle passed away.
I think that's that's about what it was. Yeah. So I drove it, and I actually, it wasn't the winter. It was going into winter. So I actually left here in the snow. And by the time I got down to Whitehorse, there was no snow the whole rest of the way. So I was fortunate with that, but I had a pretty good time. I stopped in Watson Lake at the Signpost Forest and dumped off a few stickers, took some pictures, and found some cool, in that Signpost Forest, people leave. I don't know how it started, if the people were just tacking signs to trees, and then they decided, hey, let's not tear up the trees anymore. We'll just plant posts. So they put posts up, and people will tack their, they'll bring a license plate or something from wherever they're from, and you could spend half an hour in there looking at all these signs. There's that many signs. And so, I stopped there. I remember stopping at a few other places. There was in Prince George, there's a main, their truck stop. It's nothing like our truck stops, but it was a fuel hub. I stopped there, stayed the night, and I was driving like 17 hours a day and sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, depending. And I made it through. Actually made it all the way to Vegas in 4 days.
That's just driving, not sleeping.
Yep. And and that's how I planned, because I was wanting to get through. And
Yep.
but it does, like I said, Dave and Christy are on their trek. I think they're going to take 5 days to get through
11,
Canada.
Wasn't it 11 days total?
10.
10?
Mm-hmm.
I know they had a bunch of places they wanted to stop and be halfway be tourists.
Yeah, so they're going to be tourists on the way down, because they're not in a hurry. But
No.
like I said, that's what this episode was about, just to kind of go in conjunction with them. They're real close friends of ours. Like I said, check Dave out on Bullets to Beans podcast. I do listen to him on Spotify. He's also on the Instagram page doing his daily diary. But this is why I'm doing the Alcan highway now, and if you ever get a chance, like I said, there's a lot of beautiful places through Canada. Alaska is my home. It's near and dear to my heart about the scenery, and
Hunting and fishing.
well, yeah, and nothing compares to Alaska to me. The closest I can say is basically Alberta.
yeah.
You get down there with the trees. I mean, as you get farther south, you're getting bigger trees. You get back into the actual fir trees and the
Well, it's just like our coastline. You go down to Juneau and
yeah,
even Girdwood. Yeah, I mean, those are kind of similar trees.
yeah. So that's how it is going down through there, and that's what that reminds me of. But it was beautiful. You see lots of animals. I think I seen a caribou come off of a hill, and it was a pretty steep hill, and he didn't like it, so he ran off into the river. And I got some good shots of caribou. There's bison all over the road down there.
Go to Delta and there's bison everywhere up there.
Yeah, but we're not talking about Delta.
Well, that's part of the Yukon.
We're talking about going through Canada.
Well, that's part of the road, man.
But yeah, there's those were introduced back in up there though.
Reintroduced.
Yeah, reintroduced, and through Canada, I think that's their normal herds.
I think that might be the same part of the herd because I believe that was the woodland bison that came out of Canada. So,
but yeah, so you got a lot of road, you got a lot of stuff to do and see.
but that herd that's in Delta was introduced almost about the same time the highway was built back in the 1920s.
Back in the 40s.
Okay, well the herd
Yeah.
was in the 1920s.
So yeah, like I said, I think I remember seeing a wolf or two, and maybe a black bear. But like I've had people say that they've seen brown bears, or grizzlies and the interior bears. But it was a fun trip for me. I made it through safe. But like Brian said earlier, my brother and I were lucky to be alive. We did flip the car. We hit. They had some freaky weather because we were traveling through the first part of January. They had it where it got warm and then froze and then got warm and froze, and so there was black ice and there were ruts in the black ice, and we just happened to hit it, flip the car, but the safety measures on that car kept us from being crushed.
What kind of car was it?
It was a 99 Chevy Tracker.
And you know how small those are.
Yeah, it's
And
it's
you
like
if
the
you
little
guys-
bumper cars at the fair.
If you guys don't know how big these two are, one's 7 foot, one's what 6'8",
6'8".
6'10", 6'9", 6'8".
And yeah, we were packed to the gills with all of his stuff, and like I said,
It's like watching the clowns get out of at the circus. These two getting out of that car. I mean,
Andre the Giant getting out of a clown car.
exactly. That's exactly what these two.
But anyway, like I said,
It's amazing
the
they're
end
alive.
result was that delayed our trip through Canada coming home because we rolled the car. We had to get a tow truck. Well, what happened? We got out. We were outside on the road 5 minutes in 30 below Celsius, which I think is just like 10 or maybe 8 or 10 degrees below zero. We caught a truck driver and his girlfriend drove us into Haines Junction, where we called the tow truck. We got the tow truck the next morning. They took us back to Whitehorse, and then we flew home. And 3 weeks later, we went back and got it. We made it safely home. So, all said and done.
I saw the car. They shouldn't be alive. It was a mess.
But like I said, that was the safety precautions on those vehicles back then. Was all the weight goes on the engine portion compartment. Otherwise, my brother and I would have been crushed, and it turned out for the better. So with that being said, I'm going to be right back. I'm going to close the show out. All right, as I close the show, Brian and I kind of got off topic, but it was kind of in a good informative way, showing the goods and the bads of traveling the Alcan Highway. When Brian traveled it when he was 8 and 10 years old, it was not paved. Now it's paved, but it still can be dangerous. My brother and I traveled it in the winter. We could have had a different result than what we did, but we're still here. Thank God for that.
Amen to that.
As I close the show off, I just want to keep my thoughts with Dave and Christy. Safe travels to Arizona and your daily diary we're going to keep an eye on. Please like and share my page, Upper One Podcast. It's on Facebook. We're on all the socials, Spotify, Twitter. If you want to email the show, upper_one_podcast@yahoo.com. Like I said, please like and share. I really appreciate you listening. And also check out Dave. It's Bullets to Beans. And we will, as Dave said, we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks for joining me, Brian.
You're welcome.